divine day, divine rise. Blessed be to your day. May it be everything you require to create everything that you desire. Last night we got into emotional sabotage. Last night we got into that emotional sabotage. Last night we got into emotional sabotage on the God Hour show. Throughout the week we've been getting into the stepping into that no self or that nothingness, assuming the position, the quality, understanding the qualities of ourselves in that space. And while I was at the gym getting ready, like something popped in my head about trauma bonding and love languages and communication and comprehension. Our love language can become a coping mechanism when we don't open up that dialogue with our traumas. Physical touch and intimacy, gifts given and received, and their reciprocal effect, the words and affirmations versus conditioning, acts of service versus necessity, and quality time versus space. There's some of those little points that I wanted to get into as we close that back down. How do I close that back down? All right, cool. Go back here. Oh, that's how I do that. But yeah, if I look at my physical aspects, like I'm somebody with the physical touch, somebody with the love language, or one of the, because you can have multiple aptitudes to your love languages. Somebody with the love language of physical touch. Somebody with the love language of physical touch that has been their touch. Like there's a difference between feeling and being touched. There's a difference between being felt and being touched. A lot of times based in this through a traumatic experience for physical, in that example, the way that we see based on the quantity of touch, greetings, the way that we look at greetings, the way that we look at physical touch based on the quantity versus the quality of the touch. When we understand our energy is a healing aspect, we're thinking about from the healing aspect. When one is avoiding or using physical touch as a coping mechanism, they're more concentrated on the amount of touching rather than the quality of what's touching them, how they're being felt. They're worried about how they're touching a certain space rather than how they're being felt or how they're being received. So when we look at the aspects of me being physical touch, for example, me having the physical touch dialogue, I thought it was basically, I used to think since my love language is physical touch, my urges based on the quantity, based on my acceptance, rejection, neglect, trying to be received as a certain way, I thought that I had to be, my physical touch was more on that sense of not really being felt or really not being understood. So I found myself in a lot of situations to where the beginning of relationships, the beginning of friendships, the beginning of a lot of things that I was doing, it was very, very physical. It was very, very physical as a coping mechanism and to keep me away from dealing with or seeing certain aspects. So a lot of times inside of my space, where it started off very physical and it was a very physical aptitude, after a while, I wasn't feeling it. So it would dwindle down. It would shut the fuck down. So then I'm looking at it as now I'm looking for other aspects to touch in that physical presence. And we're not just talking about the physical touch of you. We're talking about the physical aptitudes to be able to cultivate those emotions. Same thing when we look at the aspects of gift giving versus receiving. I remember being in a space where I was giving a lot. I was giving more in that same sense of the physical to avoid where I learned it from, or to deal with because I didn't want people to go without, or be to go without something in their life. I understood what that went for. So I found myself giving to a point to prove my worth. So I never saw reciprocation, but I was giving more than I was giving to myself. So of course, when it came to that point, when I was waiting on reciprocation, or this assumption of reciprocation, I didn't understand what the gifts were in the first place, how I was giving gifts and how gifts were given to me. Go into the aspects of your acts of service. The way that your act of service, is it based on the necessity, or is it based on a true support system? Supporting in the aspects of going forward, rather than going into this space with myself of the way me thinking about my acts of service, they were always based in me remaining in a certain space. My acts of service were based on me overworking, showing myself, showing up that I'll ride for anything, showing up that I'm gonna be a rider for it, or I'm gonna die for it. So then, once again, that quality versus that reciprocation. Going into the aspects of quality time versus space. I thought quality time meant I was looking at quality time versus the quantity of time. So now I'm looking at the quantity of time. When we've heard that, we've seen memes with that. It's like whenever I was in these spaces where someone was like, I like quality time. When I think about quality of time, I think about the efficiency within that space of my time. When I'm in that space, when we're spending time, what are we talking about? What are we building on? What is the discussion? Versus the quantity of time, to where you get stuck in, well, we've been together for this many years, so we should be at this point. This, when we think about quality time, the quality of your time. When you think about the gifts that you're giving, when you're thinking about how you receive things, that aspect of reciprocity. A lot of these things, when we're looking at ourselves, we're looking at them from that askew view of the more that I give, the more that, remember, think about it like this. Anything based on expectation devoids the quality altogether. Anything that comes with a condition or an assumption or this expectation based on that emotional usage automatically voids out the quality. Because now we're going to accept things based on where we're already at. That's like, if every day you were like, that's like, I remember back in the day, well, it's like way back in the day, giving a chick flowers that never had flowers before. Giving the gift of flowers just because. In that narrative. Giving the gift of flowers just because. Giving the gift of flowers or conversation or whatever just because. The way that was received a lot of times was, okay, I got this gift. Now I have to give them something in a physical. I have to give them something in return based on this value. So it automatically voided out the quality. A lot of times we sit in these spaces and we void out our quality. We void out the ability to learn our value, to learn the quality, to learn ourselves, because we're so quick to react in a certain way, especially when we look at the aspect of physical touch. The moment that somebody gives you a look or a smile or touches you on your shoulder, touches you, you're like, oh my God, they like me. Remember, we're always talking about the aspects of the inner child. So you're like, oh my God, they like me. I have to give them something. What's the only thing that you're going to give them? The only thing that you think is of value. Usually in a traumatic experience, it's that innocence or that value that you lost. So now you're looking to get what you lost. based in that physical touch. You're looking to receive this reciprocation based on how you give. You're used to doing the bare necessities. We talked about those necessities last night. You're used to giving a certain amount of necessity on basics in order to receive something. Okay, cool. I showed you that I do this, this, and this. I service this. I do this type of service. I do this. I cook. I clean. I work. I do these things. All right, cool. According to this timeline, we've been together for this amount of time. So it's like that should be good enough for us to go forward. You're voiding it out with expectancy. You're only doing it based on as long as it gives you a reaction. This is when we start comprehending our love language. This is when you start comprehending how you're having those words of affirmation. A lot of times we give those words of affirmation and we use them as a form of conditioning. So if somebody tells you every day that you're beautiful, every day that you're sexy, you're beautiful, you're gorgeous, goddess, mother queen, mother earth, there's an expectancy with that, especially when someone uses the words affirmation based on expectancy. I called you everything beautiful and everything good, and I didn't get anything in return. You voided out the value. As opposed to you going into the space and really saying, I admire you, because you haven't learned how to comprehend that, say it to yourself. You've always used it as a weapon. You've always used it as a weapon or an instrument to receive something. You were used to using your physical touch to receive something. So based on that predestination of using your physical touch to receive something, guess how you used it every time? If you didn't receive anything, you stopped doing it. You would use it as a weapon. You use your strokes and you use your WAP as a fucking weapon. But what happens when you meet someone that's dealt with those aspects, it now triggers your worth. That worth, your worth and your value have always been there. Now they're triggering that worth and that value in you. How do you value yourself? I thought you didn't need or want me because you didn't want to touch me, or you didn't accept my touch. You didn't accept my touch. That's the way that I communicate. Do you comprehend your touch? Do you understand there's a difference between the touch and feeling? Do you understand how you're in? Because if I don't understand the difference between being touched and being felt, I don't understand the difference between the catalyst of my energy. I don't like being touched because I'm very protective of my energy. So when I'm in a space and somebody tries to touch me and I slide to the side, that can trigger them. But I have to be able to read, like, oh, so they're used to physical touch as but they may not understand or comprehend this space. And I remember for a long time for myself, I didn't comprehend the power of touch because I didn't understand the value in my touch. I didn't understand the value in my touch, the value in my physical presence, the value in my physical energy, how to cultivate my energy. So I kept things in my space that were always they needed me to touch them in order to feel valued. Or so in that same thought process, same thing when it came to gifts, that giving of the gifts. It's like I would give things based on this underlining of receiving something or holding it into the background of I gave and gave and gave. It's time for you to give some stuff back. When you truly are in the aspect of giving, I'm not looking at it for something. It's not based on this aspect of necessity. It's not based on this aspect of necessity. It's not based on, oh, I gotta have people in my life. Oh my, what the hell? Oh, that's why. Do. One second, guys. Sorry. As we adjust the light, as we adjust the light, as we adjust the light. As we adjust the light, as we adjust the light, as we adjust the light. All right, cool, good. All right, we're back. I had to lean over there real quick, get that light. But as we're looking at ourselves in certain spaces, certain aptitudes with ourselves, we have to learn. This is one of the most important parts when you're learning in your shadow work and going into your internal work with yourself. How do you like that intimacy, that physical touch and intimacy? Intimacy is deeper than just you touching somebody for a reaction or you touching based on that creation. It's actually a healing aspect. So think about how intimate you are with yourself, not just in the sense of touching yourself, but how do you expand that into your meditation? How do you expand this into into the aspects of your day? How do you take care of yourself to give that aspect, to give the best quality of that physical energy? When it comes into your giving and your receiving, are you in a balance of giving and receiving? Are you not looking for an expectation or assumption so you can understand reciprocation? Because when it comes to giving and receiving, remember, this is about that aspect of that reciprocation. A lot of times you'll give too much or you'll try to receive too much and you're not looking at the aspects of the reciprocation, the value in the reciprocation, because you're giving out based on quantity and not quality. I know that my energy going into a space, that when I give into a space, whether I give to a client or I'm giving to in my relationship or whatever it is, I know that I'm giving the most aptitude quality. So what I'm going to receive is going to be lessons in the quality of what I'm giving. I'm not looking for anything to be reciprocated other than the lessons in understanding how to assess how I give my quality. It's not going to stop me any less. It's not going to make me like, I ain't going to do it anyway or fuck this shit. No, it's not going to stop me. I'm not going to look at it towards the end of anything and be like, well, you owe me $27.50 and you owe me this and you owe me that. And I gave you this and I gave you that. So I expect this back. Because as long as I'm holding on to that, the next space that I go into is going to be of that same quantity. I'm going to go into any space under that thought process to receive that quantity. I'm going to find that quantity in something. That thought is still there and is still present. So now I go into another space, and this is how we go back and forth. Now you go into another space where somebody is now overly giving. So now you feel in yourself that you can't give enough because they're always giving to you. You're not used to receiving. It's only until first I understand how I give to myself based on the quality of what I give to myself, the quality of the time I give to myself, the quality of the words that I speak to myself, the quality of the touch, maybe if I just need to hug myself. Those are the aspects that I get to look at. So now I can evaluate and assess and read my space. Rather than me sitting there like, oh my God, motherfuckers always taking. They're taking and taking and taking because that's what you said it for. Think about your conversation with yourself. You say you work to survive. You say you work to get everything that you want in life. So guess what you try? Because I came from a place of nothing. You're afraid to go into that nothingness. That connotation, we talked about it all week. That connotation of nothingness for you is bad. When you think of nothing, you think of bad. Instead of you thinking of nothing as a reflective, the deepest void to that reflective point of yourself. If I'm in a space where I'm physically giving up my energy all the time and I'm not getting and nothing's being reciprocated, or this energy, I'm feeling more and more drained. Now I got to look at the nothing. How did I define that within myself? When I look at the quality of my gifts, how did I define that quality within myself based in that support? When I think about quality time, how I give that quality time to myself as opposed to me that's filling up a pattern. Remember we talked about those patterns deep last night. When you're talking about that pattern, I'm giving quality time based upon a pattern. I'm giving words of affirmation based on the conditioning of that pattern. I'm giving physical touch based on the conditioning of the intimacy or the energy I need for that space. I'm giving these gifts based on the aptitude of being seen a certain way. So I'm not dealing with rejection. I'm not dealing with the rejection and trying to be my acceptance wounds. I'm doing these acts of service based on the necessity inside of my space with myself in order for me to be able to say I did something. Remember, that voids out the entire contract. You having this expectancy based on the lack of what you give it to yourself, or understanding yourself when that reaction comes up, that trigger comes up, it'll have you going back and forth into that space. You'll just keep, either you're going to replace it by saying, with physical touch, for example, you're going to replace it with if you're not going to touch me or you're not going to give me this physical aptitude, somebody else will. It's time for you to learn to yourself, what is this physical conduit or this intimacy? What is this value? What is this worth that you're trying to give to yourself? That you're afraid to give to yourself, that you want to put out outside of yourself to avoid that true vulnerability. When it comes to that gift of you giving and receiving, what is the aptitude of this gift? Is this your way of showing vulnerability instead of actually knowing how to comprehend vulnerability? That way you can actually understand reciprocation and you're not killing yourself. When you're thinking about that quality time versus the aspect of space, sometimes the most quality time you can give someone is space. But you have a fear of you having the quality of your space. So the time you spend in your space, you're stuck on, if I spend too long in this space, then I'm going to give you an example. Every morning I wake up, I meditate. Today, this weird thought came into my mind, because I usually do I meditate for about 15 minutes when I wake up in the day. I'm sitting there and I'm meditating, taking my deep breaths in, going through my cycles, going through my mantras, talking to myself. And then this crazy thought popped in my mind. I was like, has it been longer than 15 minutes? Has it been longer than 15 minutes? Wait, it might have been, let me look at my phone. Like, no, trust the process. This is your time. Do you trust that you set your alarm? Do you trust that you set yourself up? And I was like, yeah, I set my alarm. I set myself up. I just sat down a little bit earlier. Let me enjoy this time. Because if I didn't do that or give myself that quality time, I would have been behind. So it's like, after doing so much of my work internally, that's me assessing in the moment. Before getting to that type of moment, I had to get to the point of, with quality time, I had to get to the point of giving myself true quality time based on reassurance of my purpose, my potential, and my growth and my learning. When it came to the aptitude of physical touch and understanding that physical touch in my energy and being intimate with myself and understanding myself, I had to bring myself to a quality point to understand, and gauge the rest, what's being reciprocated to me. When it came to me giving those gifts, or receiving gifts, I had to get to a point. Sometimes I like, when I tell people, like, I really don't want a gift. You don't have to get me anything. I'm just happy that you thought about me. Okay, cool. I had to get past that point because me reacting in that way was still coming from a traumatic experience of not getting certain things when I was in that younger aptitude. So I put that to that quantity. The more people that thought about me and got me gifts, that was in the aptitude of acceptance. That was in the aspect I wasn't being, my emotions weren't being neglected. So I had to get to a real vulnerable point. Everything that you're doing, you're going to be taking you to that point of vulnerability. Without vulnerability, for a lot of times for us inside of a certain space, using our love language without comprehension or opening up that dialogue to our traumas, we use that as that coping mechanism. So I give and give and give as a way to shed away from vulnerability because I have an expectation. If they do not give me something in return, then I'm not going to open up anymore. So as quick as I jumped in there, it's as quick as I jumped out. Hot and cold, two extremes. There was never no in between. You're the in between. When it came to the acts of service, based on not being on necessity, my necessities had to be met by me. That way I can meet to that middle point. That way I'm not overreaching by trying to put my necessities into their space. Once again, accountability and responsibility for myself. Those services, those words of affirmation, looking at words of affirmation outside of the space of a conditioning. If I don't, because think about it like this. You'll tell somebody that you love them. You'll tell somebody that they're beautiful and all these things. The moment that you get upset, you don't love them. You don't believe in them. You don't trust them. All those conditioned aspects. It's just as bad to say it over and over. And I appreciate you, just to try to, as a word of affirmation based on assumption and not being able to express it or explain it. And it's okay not to be able to express it or explain it. But if it's truly of quality of your value of yourself, you have found a way to express it in a healthy manner. So if I say that I appreciate someone, I truly appreciate them because I can show in some way, shape, or form appreciation without the fear that if I show them that I appreciate them, the first thought that comes to my mind is now they're going to use me. It takes me past that point so I can become vulnerable. When I think of this is how we go through these aspects of these acts of service. Everything that you're going to go, everything that you're doing, is it based on coping or is it really based on you becoming vulnerable with yourself, expanding yourself? Remember that opening of putting anything into a space with an expectation or a condition, it devoids the quality. It voids out the value. It voids out the lesson. It voids out the ability to embrace that aspect of that emotion. And that's what we're going to get into tomorrow night when we get in on Friday night in class. We're going to get deeper into this. Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. God Alchemist, my YouTube channel. We're going to get into distorted analysis or the psychoanalysis of the our shadows. Because a lot of times we evaluate our shadows, but we don't analyze our shadows. That means I'll evaluate it. I'll acknowledge some things about it. I'll bring myself to a state of acceptance, but I'm not really analyzing how this shadow fits in my space. How can I use my shadow in this space? What's the benefit outside of the traumatic experience? And it stifles your growth. So we're going to get into distorted analysis tomorrow night. God Hour podcast out streaming now. We got into the aspect of that nothing is and that no self. I desire you to be the fucking best. I just wanted to come on here for a little bit, drop that down. I got some sessions that I got booked in a little bit. But I desire you to be the best. I desire you to understand and comprehend. It's more than just being able to communicate and just talk about your shit. There's a difference between, and there's another level to comprehend. That comprehension with your internal work is going to be that key to that vulnerability to open up that path of the heart. So you can actually start embracing and using your energy and cultivating and using your energy in whole. Not just using it based on the benefit of your physical or your patterns. Remember, there's a difference between that pattern and that planning. You've been stuck in that pattern for a while. Now it's time to come into the plan. What is your plan? What is your goal? What is your routine? It's time to, what are you trying to preserve based on reacting to your trauma? Versus what are you trying to tap into your potential? I desire you to be the fucking best. Everything from consultations, readings, many other services, spiritual baths, all that good shit. Hit me up in the inbox. Set up that consultation. Set it up. When you're ready, let's begin. I love you. We love us. Ashe.